You guys ready for our next storyteller? Make it loud for Matty!
I never planned on getting married. I just really didn't see the point in it. I thought that, engagement rings and weddings and receptions all seem so expensive, and it all seems so corporate and wasteful. And as a young sort of hippie anarchist, I thought that the whole institution of marriage seems kind of outdated, and I thought that if I met a woman and we were in love, that I didn't need this piece of paper to validate that for us. And as you can imagine, that's a pretty big bump in the relationship road when someone you're dating finds out that information about you. And I would usually, that conversation would usually come up around Valentine's Day. And I thought that Valentine's Day was this just bullshit made up corporate holiday, and I hated it. And when you're dating somebody and they ask you what you want to do for Valentine's Day, when you say that, it's the quickest way to ruin a good mood in the room. And I remember I was dating this one woman in my early 20s, and she told me, we were having the Valentine's Day conversation, and she said, yeah, you could make a political statement about everything, or you could just shut the fuck up and buy me a card for Valentine's Day. And that's really valid advice, but I did not take that. Instead, we broke up, which is sort of the opposite of buying a card for somebody. And that's how it was with my relationships for a while. I would be dating somebody, and around the time that it should have started to get serious, it would just sort of fizzle out because Valentine's Day or marriage or something about a long time commitment would come up, and the relationship would end, and I would be fine with that because I was like, okay, I'm fine, I'm sticking to my principles here. And then I met this woman named Valerie, and all that kind of changed for me. We went out on our first date, and it was just crazy how much we enjoyed each other's company. We just immediately clicked, and we started spending all of our free time together, and all of a sudden it was like I was living this montage from an 80s rom-com, and it was great. It was the most healthy and best relationship I had been in. And after about 8 months or so, that conversation came up about our future and marriage and what might happen, and I was honest with her. I told her how I felt about marriage, but I also said, I don't see myself ever wanting to break up with you, but I don't feel like I need this piece of paper to validate that. And Valerie was this person who always knew that she wanted to be married, and then this conversation led into another conversation about how I didn't really want to have kids, and she always knew that she wanted to have kids, and we came really, really close to breaking up over this. And eventually she decided that she felt like we were in the best relationship that she had ever been in too, and she didn't want to lose that over some abstract future that we may or may not have together. So we stayed together, and shortly after that, we moved in together. And the entire time we were together, I knew that she still wanted to be married. I knew that she was happy in our relationship, but I knew that she'd be happier if we got married. And finally, after about 5 years together, I realized how selfish I was being. And I'm with this woman who I love dearly, and she makes my life better just by being in it. And I know that getting married will make her happy. And for some reason that I came up with when I was like 19 years old, I'm refusing to do it. So I just said, you know what, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna propose to her. I'm gonna do that. And I think she felt the shift because one day she sort of randomly showed me this ring on Etsy, and it was it's an engagement ring, and it's a rough cut diamond. And she says, I know you're not gonna ask me to marry you, but if you ever did, this would be a great ring. And so I'm like, all right, I want to surprise her though, so I need to throw her off the scent, and I figured the best way to do this is to go old school anti-marriage on her. And so I start bringing up all these points that I'm working these points in the conversation, all the hits, like, marriage is just this bullshit institution brought up by the church, and it's too expensive, and I don't know any married people that are happy, and it's all the things that you want to hear from your longtime romantic partner, basically. And then so I go to buy that ring on Etsy, and it's gone. And I'm like, oh, at first I'm really bummed out, but then I'm like, no, wait, this is great. This will feed right into it because now I get to tell her that I don't have a ring. And so I tell her, hey, Valerie, I want to let you know I saw that ring is gone. I don't want you to think that I bought it. And I can tell that she doesn't believe me. And so I really drive it home. I'm like, no, I'm not kidding. I don't want you to think that I'm going to surprise you at Christmas with it or something like that. And then I throw in and you know how I feel about marriage anyway. And And in that moment, I just see her, she just gets so sad and she just looks so unhappy, and I can almost see like a spark go out in her eye, and I'm like thinking like, wow, this is perfect. She's never gonna see this coming. And so then, Christmas comes and goes, and I don't want to propose to her on Christmas or New Year's because I feel like it's cliche. And then January comes, and a bunch of my friends got engaged, and I didn't want to make it look like it was a reactionary proposal. And so then February comes, and I'm not going to propose to her on Valentine's Day because we all know how I feel about that. And finally, my friend Josie, who is holding the ring for me so Valerie doesn't randomly stumble upon it, and she's actually the one who introduced Valerie and I, and she calls me up and she says, look, I don't know what you're doing over there, but I've been talking Valerie off a ledge for the last 2 weeks because suddenly she's questioning her future with you because you're so anti-commitment all of a sudden. And she says, I know you want to surprise her, but dial it back and hurry up and propose to her. So I do. I plan this weekend, and we go to Catalina, and we have a picnic on the roof of the hotel that we're staying at. We're overlooking the water, and I surprise her with a ring, and thankfully she says yes. And in that moment, she just looks so happy, and that makes me so happy. And then I'm just thinking, like, why did I wait so long to propose to this woman? And the next year we got married, and then we bought a house, and we had a kid, and I just couldn't believe all of a sudden I'm doing all these things that I never thought I was going to do. And it really just brought us so much closer together, and it made our relationship feel just that much more permanent. And, I'm probably always going to feel that Valentine's Day is just a bullshit made-up holiday, and rings and weddings are expensive, but when it's all said and done, I'm just glad I shut the fuck up and asked her to marry me. Thank you.
Keep it going for Matty.